Four great aspects of the Mother, four of her leading powers and personalities, have stood in front in her guidance of this universe and in her dealings with the terrestrial play. One is her personality of calm wideness and comprehending wisdom and tranquil benignity and inexhaustible compassion and sovereign and surpassing majesty and all-ruling greatness. Another embodies her power of splendid strength and irresistible passion, her warrior mood, her overwhelming will, her impetuous swiftness and world-shaking force. A third is vivid and sweet and wonderful, with her deep secret of beauty and harmony and fine rhythm, her intricate and subtle opulence, her compelling attraction and captivating grace. The fourth is equipped with her close and profound capacity of intimate knowledge and careful, flawless work and quiet and exact perfection in all things. Wisdom, strength, harmony, perfection are their several attributes, and it is these powers that they bring with them into the world, manifest in a human disguise in their vibhutis, and shall found in the divine degree of their ascension in those who can open their earthly nature to the direct and living influence of the Mother. To the four, we give the four great names: Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati. Imperial Maheshwari is seated in the wideness above the thinking mind and will, and sublimates and greatens them into wisdom and largeness, or floods with a splendor beyond them. For she is the mighty and wise one who opens us to the supramental infinities and the cosmic vastness, to the grandeur of the supreme light, to a treasure house of miraculous knowledge, to the measureless movement of the Mother's eternal forces. Tranquil is she and wonderful, great and calm forever. Nothing can move her because all wisdom is in her. Nothing is hidden from her that she chooses to know. She comprehends all things and all beings and their nature, and what moves them, and the law of the world and its times, and how all was and is and must be. A strength is in her that meets everything and masters, and none can prevail in the end against her vast, intangible wisdom and high, tranquil power. Equal, patient, and unalterable in her will, she deals with men according to their nature, and with things and happenings according to their force and the truth that is in them. Partiality she has none, but she follows the decrees of the Supreme, and some she raises up, and some she casts down or puts away from her into the darkness. To the wise, she gives a greater and more luminous wisdom. Those that have vision she admits to her counsels. On the hostile, she imposes the consequence of their hostility. The ignorant and foolish she leads according to their blindness. In each man she answers and handles the different elements of his nature according to their need and their urge and the return they call for, puts on them the required pressure, or leaves them to their cherished liberty, to prosper in the ways of the ignorance or to perish. For she is above all, bound by nothing, attached to nothing in the universe. Yet has she, more than any other, the heart of the universal mother. For her compassion is endless and inexhaustible. All are to her eyes her children and portions of the One, even the Asura and Rakshasa and Pishacha, and those that are revolted and hostile. Even her rejections are only a postponement. Even her punishments are a grace. But her compassion does not blind her wisdom or turn her action from the course decreed. For the truth of things is her one concern, knowledge her center of power, and to build our soul and our nature into the divine truth, her mission and her labor. Mahakali is of another nature. Not wideness, but height. Not wisdom, but force and strength are her peculiar power. There is in her an overwhelming intensity, a mighty passion of force to achieve, a divine violence rushing to shatter every limit and obstacle. All her divinity leaps out in a splendor of tempestuous action. She is there for swiftness, for the immediately effective process, the rapid and direct stroke, the frontal assault that carries everything before it. Terrible is her face to the Asura, dangerous and ruthless her mood against the haters of the divine. For she is the warrior of the worlds who never shrinks from the battle. Intolerant of imperfection, she deals roughly with all in man that is unwilling, and she is severe to all that is obstinately obscure and ignorant. Her wrath is immediate and dire against treachery and falsehood and malignity. Ill will is smitten at once by her scourge. Indifference, negligence, and sloth in the divine work she cannot bear. And she smites awake at once with sharp pain, if need be, the untimely slumberer and the loiterer. The impulses that are swift and straight and frank, the movements that are unreserved and absolute, the aspiration that mounts in flame, are the motion of Mahakali. Her spirit is tameless. Her vision and will are high and far-reaching like the flight of an eagle. Her feet are rapid on the upward way, and her hands are outstretched to strike and to succor. For she too is the mother, and her love is as intense as her wrath, and she has a deep and passionate kindness. When she is allowed to intervene in her strength, then in one moment are broken like things without consistence, the obstacles that immobilize or the enemies that assail the seeker. If her anger is dreadful to the hostile, and the vehemence of her pressure painful to the weak and timid, she is loved and worshipped by the great, the strong, and the noble. For they feel that her blows beat what is rebellious in their material into strength and perfect truth, hammer straight what is wry and perverse, and expel what is impure or defective. But for her, what is done in a day might have taken centuries. Without her, Ananda might be wide and grave or soft and sweet and beautiful, but would lose the flaming joy of its most absolute intensities. To knowledge she gives a conquering might, brings to beauty and harmony a high and mounting movement, and imparts to the slow and difficult labor after perfection an impetus that multiplies the power and shortens the long way. Nothing can satisfy her that falls short of the supreme ecstasies, the highest heights, the noblest aims, the largest vistas. Therefore, with her is the victorious force of the divine, and it is by grace of her fire and passion and speed if the great achievement can be done now rather than hereafter. Wisdom and force are not the only manifestations of the Supreme Mother. There is a subtler mystery of her nature, and without it, wisdom and force would be incomplete things, and without it, perfection would not be perfect. Above them is the miracle of eternal beauty, an unseizable secret of divine harmonies, the compelling magic of an irresistible universal charm and attraction that draws and holds things and forces and beings together and obliges them to meet and unite, that a hidden Ananda may play from behind the veil and make of them its rhythms and its figures. This is the power of Mahalakshmi, and there is no aspect of the divine Shakti more attractive to the heart of embodied beings. Maheshwari can appear too calm and great and distant for the littleness of earthly nature to approach or contain her. Mahakali, too swift and formidable for its weakness to bear. But all turn with joy and longing to Mahalakshmi, for she throws the spell of the intoxicating sweetness of the divine. To be close to her is a profound happiness, and to feel her within the heart is to make existence a rapture and a marvel. Grace and charm and tenderness flow out from her like light from the sun, and wherever she fixes her wonderful gaze, or lets fall the loveliness of her smile, the soul is seized and made captive and plunged into the depths of an unfathomable bliss. Magnetic is the touch of her hands, and their occult and delicate influence refines mind and life and body, and where she presses her feet course miraculous streams of an entrancing Ananda. And yet it is not easy to meet the demand of this enchanting power or to keep her presence. Harmony and beauty of the mind and soul, harmony and beauty of the thoughts and feelings, harmony and beauty in every outward act and movement, harmony and beauty of the life and surroundings. This is the demand of Mahalakshmi. Where there is affinity to the rhythms of the secret world bliss, and response to the call of the all-beautiful, and concord and unity and the glad flow of many lives turned towards the divine, in that atmosphere she consents to abide. But all that is ugly and mean and base, all that is poor and sordid and squalid, all that is brutal and coarse, repels her advent. Where love and beauty are not, or are reluctant to be born, she does not come. Where they are mixed and disfigured with baser things, she turns soon to depart, or cares little to pour her riches. If she finds herself in men's hearts, surrounded with selfishness and hatred and jealousy and malignance and envy and strife, if treachery and greed and ingratitude are mixed in the sacred chalice, if grossness of passion and unrefined desire degrade devotion, in such hearts the gracious and beautiful goddess will not linger. A divine disgust seizes upon her, and she withdraws, for she is not one who insists or strives. Or, veiling her face, she waits for this bitter and poisonous devil's stuff to be rejected and disappear, before she will found anew her happy influence. Ascetic bareness and harshness are not pleasing to her, nor the suppression of the heart's deeper emotions, and the rigid repression of the soul's and the life's parts of beauty. For it is through love and beauty that she lays on men the yoke of the divine. Life is turned in her supreme creations into a rich work of celestial art, and all existence into a poem of sacred delight. The world's riches are brought together and concerted for a supreme order, and even the simplest and commonest things are made wonderful by her intuition of unity and the breath of her spirit. Admitted to the heart, she lifts wisdom to pinnacles of wonder, and reveals to it the mystic secrets of the ecstasy that surpasses all knowledge, meets devotion with the passionate attraction of the divine, teaches to strength and force the rhythm that keeps the might of their acts harmonious and in measure, and casts on perfection the charm that makes it endure forever. Maha Saraswati is the mother's power of work and her spirit of perfection and order. The youngest of the four, she is the most skillful and executive faculty and the nearest to physical nature. Maheshwari lays down the large lines of the world forces. Mahakali drives their energy and impetus. Mahalakshmi discovers their rhythms and measures. But Mahasaraswati presides over their detail of organization and execution, relation of parts and effective combination of forces, and unfailing exactitude of result and fulfillment. The science and craft and technique of things are Mahasaraswati's province. Always she holds in her nature and can give to those whom she has chosen the intimate and precise knowledge, the subtlety and patience, the accuracy of intuitive mind and conscious hand, and discerning eye of the perfect worker. This power is the strong, the tireless, the careful and efficient builder, organizer, administrator, technician, artisan, and classifier of the worlds. When she takes up the transformation and new building of the nature, her action is laborious and minute, and often seems to our impatience slow and interminable, but it is persistent, integral, and flawless. For the will in her works is scrupulous, unsleeping, indefatigable. Leaning over us, she notes and touches every little detail, finds out every minute defect, gap, twist, or incompleteness, considers and weighs accurately all that has been done and all that remains still to be done hereafter. Nothing is too small or apparently trivial for her attention. Nothing, however impalpable or disguised or latent, can escape her. Molding and remolding, she labors each part till it has attained its true form, is put in its exact place in the whole, and fulfills its precise purpose. In her constant and diligent arrangement and rearrangement of things, her eye is on all needs at once, and the way to meet them. And her intuition knows what is to be chosen, and what rejected, and successfully determines the right instrument, the right time, the right conditions, and the right process. Carelessness and negligence and indolence she abhors. All scamped and hasty and shuffling work, all clumsiness and appupre and misfire, all false adaptation and misuse of instruments and faculties, and leaving of things undone or half done, is offensive and foreign to her temper. When her work is finished, nothing has been forgotten. No part has been misplaced or omitted or left in a faulty condition. All is solid, accurate, complete, admirable. Nothing short of a perfect perfection satisfies her, and she is ready to face an eternity of toil if that is needed for the fullness of her creation. Therefore, of all the mother's powers, she is the most long-suffering with man and his 1,000 imperfections. Kind, smiling, close and helpful, not easily turned away or discouraged, insistent even after repeated failure. Her hand sustains our every step on condition that we are single in our will and straightforward and sincere. For a double mind she will not tolerate, and her revealing irony is merciless to drama and histrionics and self-deceit and pretense. A mother to our wants, a friend in our difficulties, a persistent and tranquil counselor and mentor, chasing away with her radiant smile the clouds of gloom and fretfulness and depression, reminding always of the ever-present help, pointing to the eternal sunshine. She is firm, quiet, and persevering in the deep and continuous urge that drives us towards the integrality of the higher nature. All the work of the other powers leans on her for its completeness, for she assures the material foundation, elaborates the stuff of detail, and erects and rivets the armor of the structure. Namaste. We'll continue reading the balance of this last chapter in the booklet, The Mother, when we meet next Sunday. We will continue farther into March. I think that also is one of our customs now, to carry the Mother with us into succeeding months beyond her own. So these four aspects, you'll remember that they were the subject Sri Aurobindo was working on for weeks, perhaps months. In the middle part of 1927, probably finished them in the fall of 1927. And then corrected, added these other chapters to the first, the message released on the mother's birthday. Bundled together, they made a booklet with 6 sections. We're well into the 6th now. So, it isn't that Sri Aurobindo had somehow, in 1926, suddenly been introduced to the concept, the being, the personality of the Divine Mother. We can see that as early as 1912, as he was putting entries into the record of yoga, and all the way up at least to 1918, he was working with all of these goddess powers in his own yoga, his own personal practice of yoga, and assembling them in such a way, or allowing them to assemble him in such a way that they could each have their voice in his being. They could reshape him. Sri Aurobindo called this as a group the Daivi Prakriti, the divine nature. And this was the 3rd member of his Sapta Chatushtaya, the 7-fold quartet, which was a sort of manual that he had written down, inspired from above, that he should follow, a sort of edict for the practice of his yoga. This was actually the 3rd section of it, I believe, Devi Bhava, also called earlier Chandi Bhava. It is to work on the divinizing of human nature by calling in the divine power, the Shakti, quote, to replace our limited human energy so that this may be shaped into the image of and filled with the force of a greater infinite energy. Now you can see him writing about this in the opening section of this 6th chapter. This was what had been begun, at least in 1912, and by 1918 seems to have been roundly perfected. All these 4 goddess energies working in consistency within his being. Sometimes there would rise up from the lower nature, the untransformed Prakriti, a movement that seemed to interrupt or reverse the progress, but always it was recovered movement, went forward. So these goddess powers were active and intimate partners in the practice of his yoga, providers of grace and energy and light. Years before, the mother, as we call her, returned from Japan. So it isn't that this was a sudden discovery in 1926 and then to call Mira Alfasa Richard the mother. Rather, what was happening in his being, that the divine nature was descending, he could see coming into her human vehicle too, and revealing from behind and pressing down from above the presence of the goddess who had always been there. The emergence of that goddess, of course, is why the ashram was formed. The mother, as she came into full blossom, was the enumeration in one person of all these forces, all these powers, all these aspects of the divine. So, in this process, these four aspects of the Shakti are manifested and combined. Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati. All of them come together. But that was in his own sadhana. To have it, in a sense, instanced and made transferable and thus transformable into the members of the community gathered around him, made it possible for this divine community to at least get planted in seed form. Now, it relies, of course, upon the sincerity, not simply of the sadhaks themselves, but of earth nature generally, to permit that advance. If there is only a reluctant response or a denial from the side of the earth, if it negates its own aspiration, if it withdraws its request for the assistance, the divine help from above to effect this change of consciousness which would be needed to change nature ultimately, it is not the fault of anyone but us, because we, in a sense, are representatives of that nature. We know the struggles that we go through. We know that despite our sincerities, despite our dedications, that there is reluctance on the part of the physical nature to change. But, again, Mahasaraswati is there to take us by the hand and encourage us, and with that winning smile, to energize us to move forward, and do be careful and do be complete in your effort. The mother in the Sri Aurobindo ashram, in her normal life, dealing with ashramites, dealing with the 1,000 processes that she had to govern all at once, she didn't have the luxury of just encouraging our spiritual flowering. She had to also manage services, provide electricity, build housing, arrange for food, collect money and distribute it wisely, and the list is endless. All of this she did with a smile. But typically of these four goddesses, the one that you would meet daily would be Mahasaraswati, that spirit of perfection. She could bring forward the others. There are photographs, wonderful photographs, taken of her when she was in the Maheshwari mood. And you could see that when she was there, if suddenly she met an impossibility, she lifted her glance and she looked, and suddenly everything became possible. Things were done in a moment. At other times, seekers would ask her to intervene and drive out from them some block in their being that was preventing progress, and she would raise to her height as Mahakali, and then frequently there's a mother, after all, help me in another way. Please don't strike me with that. Because sometimes it is that blow that reshapes and transforms. But we have really to want it. And then, of course, Mahalakshmi. How many musicians and artists were there in the ashram? This is one of the principal things that the ashram was formed to do, was to give beautiful form, significant form to the energies that wanted to descend. So she would find latent talents in the least likely and offer them instruction in painting and drawing. Teach them music, sing to them, offer them an instrument. And suddenly melodies and art were produced all over the ashram. It became wonderful to be able to be there because you had your normal work, making sure that life ran as usual, but then the beatification of it all through uplifted and shared art. So, a wonderful thing. So Mahalakshmi, very much part of it. There was no absence of these divine moods, but she was centrally a representation of the Mahadevi, the Mahashakti, Ishwari. Well, we'll turn to other things next time when we gather, but I should read a section from Savitri. Of course, you can open up the book of the Divine Mother anywhere and find something great to read. So this is something that I found this time. If I can station this book here safely. It's blocking your view of me. That too is a blessing. That's the grace of the Mother if you don't have to see me. This is the beginning of Canto 4, The Vision and the Boon, in Book 3, the Book of the Divine Mother. We'll just read a page or so. Then suddenly there rose a sacred stir. Amid the lifeless silence of the void, in a solitude and an immensity, a sound came quivering like a loved footfall, heard in the listening spaces of the soul. A touch perturbed his fibers with delight. An influence had approached the mortal range. A boundless heart was near his longing heart. A mystic form enveloped his earthly shape. All at her contact broke from silence seal. Spirit and body thrilled identified, linked in the grasp of an unspoken joy. Mind, members, life were merged in ecstasy. Intoxicated as with nectarous rain, his nature's passioning stretches flowed to her. Flashing with lightnings, mad with luminous wine, all was a limitless sea that heaved to the moon. A divinizing stream possessed his veins. His body's cells awoke to spirit sense. Each nerve became a burning thread of joy. Tissue and flesh partook beatitude. A light, the dun, unplumbed subconscious caves, thrilled with the prescience of her longed-for tread, and filled with flickering crests and praying tongues. Even lost in slumber, mute, inanimate, his very body answered to her power. The one he worshipped was within him now. Flame pure, ethereal tressed, a mighty face appeared, and lips moved by immortal words. Lids, wisdom's leaves, drooped over rapture's orbs. A marble monument of ponderings shone, a forehead, sight's crypt, and large like ocean's gaze towards heaven, two tranquil eyes of boundless thought looked into man's and saw the God to come. Oh my goodness. Namaste, Jai Ma. I hope you're doing as well as you look. You look wonderful. Bright with mother's glow. Go, create beauty, carry joy with you everywhere. I hope to see you again soon. Stay well. Namaste. Jai Ma.